Everyone, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I feel so grateful to be up here with truly some of the heavyweights of the dental business industry. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about AI search visibility. I'm sure if you've heard AI, everyone talks about it every day, but how does it affect you and your dental practice, especially your patient acquisition strategies? So we're going to talk about it. I want all of you to leave today with an edge, because AI search truly is one of those competitive edges that you can have that is going to help you outperform your competition today. So I have a lot of different companies up here. I want to know how many people in the room have heard of at least one of these. Okay, that's 100% of everyone. So I want to know how many people have heard of 3 of these. Pretty much everyone. How many people know all 5 of these? That was less people than I thought, of course. Well, right now, I think what we're watching right now is the equivalency of what the 1950s was when the USSR and the USA were both trying to get a man on the moon. And what I mean by that is these are the top 5 companies in the AI race: Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, xAI, and Perplexity. And we're going to talk a little bit about how they play a role in your patients and what we need to do to ensure that your practice is being mentioned by these platforms. And just so you all know, it was actually Dr. Rashad who had requested for me to build this PowerPoint right here on AI visibility. So if you guys like the topic today, you can all thank him. So what's the old way? How patients have found you has changed, right? The old way was that you'd have a Google search bar, and then you would type something in it, and then there'd be a bunch of different answers for you. And the new way is everybody who's searching wants a single, consistent answer. So let's take a look on the left side. On the left side is what Google search looks like. You have multiple results. You have a lot of paid sponsorships. And essentially, you look at the bottom, and it's like 100 pages. There are so many results from a simple query of search on Google search compared to the right side. On the right side, there is essentially 1, 2, at maximum 3 results that are going to happen from a search. So in this case, the search was best option for a root canal specialist in Sacramento. So on the left side, you have all of these different endodontic groups, but on the right side, you have one. You have one practice that stood out, and it was Midtown Endodontics. And it actually shows you right there what is the reason why that particular practice showed up. So this is not theory. What I'm talking about is real and it's practical. This is an example of a query. The query is, help me find a reliable implant provider in Orange County area. And who's showing up at the top of that? There are several reputable dental implant providers, but the top one on ChatGPT search is OC Perio and Implant Groups of Dr. Rashad, Dr. Setia, Dr. Bergman. So the way people search on AI is not exactly the same way that they search on Google. So here are some common AI prompts. It's best dentist near me, top Invisalign provider, affordable cosmetic dentistry options, dental implant costs. Now here's a really interesting thing. How does AI decide on who to recommend? There's a lot of different moving parts to this. And a huge part of it is how we worked to get the website constructed. Really strong structure, great online reviews and ratings, local authority and citations, and making sure that the website is relevant to any questions that a patient might ask in their journey of finding the right dental provider. So here, this is known as a UTM. So how do I know? People say, how do I know the leads are coming from ChatGPT? What we do is we install what's called a UTM. It's a source tracker. And then here you can see the source right here. This was a lead, came in February 25th. And at that bottom, the source is chatgpt.com, so you can verify that this was a real lead that came from ChatGPT. Here's another example of this. On the bottom, once again, we have the UTM source parameter, ChatGPT. If you work with a dental marketing company, they should be able to tell you, where are all my leads coming from? Are they coming from Yelp? Are they coming from ChatGPT? Are they coming from Google Business Listings? If your provider doesn't know that, that really shows a gap in the information of how they quantify good results in marketing. Now, how did we achieve that? You can see right here who is a good emergency dentist in Palmdale. What my team did was we built a sub-business that operates in order to win these searches on AI by building Palmdale Emergency Dental Care, which is the same dental practice, but branded in a different way to ensure that anytime someone searches for emergency dentist options in Palmdale, that our practice shows up at the top. And since we've done this, we have a repeated amount of patients that are coming from ChatGPT. So next, I want to talk about how this works. How does the average patient search for a provider on ChatGPT? I can tell you it's a lot more complicated than the way they typically would on Google search. So here's an example. My sister just moved to West Hollywood, California, and is searching for a Spanish-speaking dental practice that takes Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance. She's looking for porcelain veneers that look like the Hollywood movie stars. Who do you recommend she see? So that's a lot of context. I mean, first of all, that's Blue Cross Blue Shield, porcelain veneers, West Hollywood, Spanish-speaking, want to look like the movie stars. Well, that's our client that shows up at the top of that search, West Hollywood Dental Studio. And it's because we spent so much time on the website architecture to ensure that all of these things, from the PPO plans to the cosmetic offerings to the Spanish, is all being mentioned on their website to ensure that they show up when someone searches for this prompt. In fact, if any of you right now pull out your phones and you type in dental implants in Orange County, in all of Orange County, OC Perion Implant Groups shows up at the top spot. On the top spot on Google, as well as the top spot on ChatGPT. And the reality is that a lot of people think it's reality, right? Endorsed by the doctor himself. The reality is that a lot of people say, well, is AI taking over SEO? And the reality is that most practices who do really well on SEO are the ones who are best in position to win an AI search as well. So now we're going to go through a case study. This is Dr. Austin of Malibu Dentistry. I want to show you guys where your North Star should be, where you should be aiming for in the age of AI search, starting here. Something like Google search dentist in Malibu. The practice ranks at the top of Google business results, as well as the first option on Google search for that term, dentist in Malibu. Then emergency dentist in Malibu. Once again, the practice shows number 1 on Google Business, and then there's an emergency dentist page that's being utilized to ensure that we capture those results for anyone searching. Number 3, root canals. In Malibu, root canal treatment is available from general dentists and orthodontists. And you can see the number 1 here is Malibu Dentistry, as well as the cited page is Malibu Dentistry. That's being mentioned once again as the first option for an organic link for root canal treatment. We repeat this again, dental implants in Malibu. You'll see here that on Google Maps, Malibu Dentistry shows, and then you have multiple options, but the number 1 cited is the dental bone grafting page in Malibu that our team worked on with Dr. Austin. Holistic dentist in Malibu. We included things on the website that talk about the biocompatible materials, the minimally invasive techniques, the connection between oral health to the systemic health of the body. we write our pages to sound almost clinical and research heavy to ensure that our client is showing up as the #1 option on Google for that search term. And let me show you an example. Even when we're not the #1 mentioned on Google AI Overview, in this case it's a competition, we're still the #1 provider on Google Places, and we're still having the citation show up on the top right, which is very important because anyone's going to click from AI Overview, they're typically going to go to that citation. So I one time had a conversation with Dr. Rashad, and Dr. Rashad had told me, I really think ChatGPT is taking over and Google is starting to get less users. Well, what does the data actually say about that? The data shows me that since this whole AI race, the number of users on Google is actually increasing because they are playing a bigger role in all of the AI platforms, especially in November 18th of last year when they brought out Gemini 3. So now, as of Q4, you actually see that ChatGPT is on a decline while Gemini is increasing. And then, of course, you have the hottest kid right now is Claude. The hottest one right now that everyone is using is Claude by Anthropic. And I have a couple predictions. My first prediction is that I think Claude is going to get bought. I think Anthropic is going to get owned by either Amazon or Apple. As you guys know, Gemini is owned by Google, and ChatGPT is a subsidiary, and a major investor of them was Microsoft. So I think either Amazon or Apple is going to make that huge acquisition. But in the dental patient space, it's still primarily Google AI, Gemini, and ChatGPT. I don't see that the majority of people are going to start looking for dental providers on Claude compared to these two. So let's take a look at the search evolution. This is as up-to-date data as I can get. I mean, these things are always moving. They're always dynamic. This is Q1. So it's still that 68% of total searches online are through traditional search engines like Google, Bing, Yahoo. They're still eating up a massive portion of the total searches. And then that 20% is social media. And something really interesting I want everyone to know is that Gen Z, which is I think anyone who's born in 97 to somewhere in the mid-2000s, their #1 place of searching is actually social media. It's actually TikTok, as well as Meta AI Summary. I know right now if you go on Instagram, Meta is actually trying to play a larger role in the search game. So that's something really interesting to think about. And what's even more interesting is YouTube Shorts is the #1 used social media by the generation after Gen Z, known as Gen Alpha. And YouTube Shorts is a subsidiary of YouTube, which is owned by Google. And Google is also the owner of Gemini. So if we're talking about where should I post my content in order to get the maximum results on AI search, 100% YouTube Shorts plays a role now. In fact, if you look at a natural Google search, the third one after AI Overview and web pages is actually short form content. But let's take a look at how much the query volume has increased. You have that traditional search in blue, right? This is between January 2023 to January 2026. It is slowly growing. But then you look at how many people are looking for AI native answers, and it's exponential. We're getting to, over 18 billion queries in a week. So I also have a really interesting statistic that I would like all of you to look at, which is how do different industries compare in terms of who is searching and querying within a topic. And what you'll see, #1, is that the majority of prompts and queries within a specific industry is healthcare. So what does that mean? It means we've reached an age where healthcare and healthcare-related topics, patients are starting to self-diagnose at a rate that we've never seen before, trying to go to ChatGPT, trying to ask them questions potentially about their blood work or about their tooth pain and trying to get an understanding about how to resolve this. Now, the really nice thing about ChatGPT and Google AI is that it's always going to say, I'm not an expert. You need to go see an expert. And so what we want to do is position your practice to be that expert for someone that's local and searching within that area. So it's a huge advantage for people in the healthcare space, people in the dental space compared to legal or IT or, finance. So I've been talking a lot about AI and I've been talking about, the importance of it, but I'm sure all of you are asking, what actually moves the needle? What could I do right now to ensure that my dental practice is showing up at the top? Well, it really goes down to three things. One is proof. You need to prove that you are the authority on this topic. You can do that by getting reviews that mention that treatment. Local PR, so making sure that there are other websites, there are other authorities mentioning you, and then directory listings, all of which are part of our SEO plan. Then there's answers, stuff like service pages and FAQs. They are so important. Frequently asked questions. When Dentist Nerds builds a website, by the end of the year, of the time we've worked with the client, their website is over 100 pages. But most dentists, when they buy a website, they have their initial 20 to 30, and then the website doesn't get updated anymore. So it really goes to show you that the frequency of updating your website with relevant content is going to play a huge role in being mentioned on AI platforms, especially if you're answering common questions that patients have. And then the last part is consistency. In marketing, we use the term NAP, name, address, phone number, and we want to make sure that this is consistent on everything from your ADA profile to your health grades to your Yelp to your ZocDoc. All of that needs to be consistent. So how does AI think? Because AI doesn't think like a human brain, right? There are some stuff in AI that it scrapes and queries maybe on a quarterly basis. It doesn't do it on a real-time basis, and that would be something like digital archives of anything that you've been mentioned in, common web scrapes, a Wikipedia page, any kind of backlinks. And then there's the live data, which we call the memory. This is the real-time data right now. And in Google Gemini, there's nothing that's more relevant than what's called your GBP or your Google Business Profile. Nowadays, your GBP or your Google Business Profile is maybe more important than your website. As crazy it is to sound, it is so necessary to make sure that your GBP is updated with new posts, with reviews, with photos, just ensuring that there's consistency between that and all the other profiles. So how does AI decide in terms of how to push your dental practice between you and your competitors? Well, it depends. I have three different options here. One is traditional Google search. What does Google search look at? They look at what's called on-page SEO. Essentially what that means is if a page has a lot of clicks, it's going to get mentioned more. Google wants to trust people that use its product, that if there's a lot of clicks to that product and a lot of time spent on that page, then it's going to push you as the authority. Now with stuff like ChatGPT and Gemini, it's really changing. ChatGPT actually does not care how much time someone spends on a web page. What they care about is how relevant the stuff that you're writing is and the proof of concept that you actually have written reviews or written cases of these dental procedures that you've done in order to elect you to be the one that it chooses and it's mentioning. Gemini is really interesting. Gemini is kind of in the middle. It is working and as some type of fusion between the product of ChatGPT and Google search. But nowadays, anyone who's on Google is automatically forced to use Gemini. If you Google anything at all, the first thing you're going to see is that AI overview, which is powered by Gemini. So what can you as a dental practice owner do? What's a 30-day action plan to ensure that you start getting more mentions on AI? The first part is fixing your NAP, your name, address, phone number. You have to make sure that it's 100% accurate, starting with your GBP profile. The next thing is when you get a review, I can't even stress how important this is. What I'm about to tell you is going to be game-changing for your AI. When you get a review, it's best to have the patient mention what type of procedure that they got in the review. They're electing to do so. So if you have a patient that had an implant procedure, instead of just having a review written that says, Dr. Bergman did a great job on my teeth and I'm very happy, it's so much better if the patient is willingly and electively uploading photos of their before and after to the Google business profile and mentioning that they had an implant procedure. So now the AIs are saying, wow, this is a real example of someone that had an implant procedure, that had a veneer procedure, that had a root canal, rather than just saying, this is a great dentist. And then 5 things, you should all right now when you go home publish about 5 answer pages. That means, what is the cost of the service? You don't have to give the exact cost, but you can certainly give a range. What is the recovery and the timeline of that service? And then, how do I know if I'm a candidate for this? And those 3 things in particular are gonna really make that game changer in terms of getting the AI to recommend you. So, these are gonna be some things that we do here at Dentist Nerds to help create the authority for you as a dental practice owner to have your website showing up on these AI searches. One is press releases. So if we can partner with a local publication, a local news outlet to get something published that mentions you, that's a huge, huge boost to our authority. The second is guest posts. So if we can have other healthcare directories talk about our dental practice, that's huge. Entity building just means that we need to have a very strong, unique, and distinct brand online, either through social media or through our web pages, and then creating content that wins. I'll tell you something really interesting. I think a lot of dentists, and I'm not here to shame you if you do this, have started using ChatGPT to write their own blogs. Well, I will tell you right now that if you do that, Google may punish you, because Google can absolutely tell if the content is written by AI or not, which is why it's still really important to push original content written by an expert editor-in-chief or an expert copywriter, because if you don't give Google something original and you're just repeating content that's already been made, it has no reason to cite you. So I always want you to think, if I'm going to have something written on my website, even though the patients may not be spending their time reading through all of it, it's very important to have great originality, to talk about your clinical expertise, because that's how Google scrapes its data. That's how Bing scrapes its data. Bing feeds the data to ChatGPT. Google feeds the data to Gemini. So next, we're going to talk about what used to be SEO. We used to use this term a lot. Marketers, we would say search engine optimization. I think in many ways, I have refrained from using that terminology anymore, because I think search engines are becoming less of a way that people find what they want as we're kind of moving into this AI world. So now we use the term search everywhere optimization. You know, we optimize so answer engines name you and the sources cite you. So here we have, you know, how do we make that the website is the source of truth? You can see this is a page we built for Dr. Bergman here. The pages have to be very clear. We have to say exactly what the type of periodontal or cosmetic work that Dr. Bergman does, what her specialty is, and then we need to do what's called schema. We install a back-end translator. Schema helps your website communicate with the AI's platforms to understand and build up this page. And even if you go on this web page, you type in OC Perio and implants, Dr. Bergman, as soon as they land on that page, there's a video there. So all of this helps in terms of building up trustworthy and reliability. And then here's a pyramid. We call it this the web of trust, how to make sure that when AI trusts you. Number 1, your Google business profile. It's the center of everything. As a brick and mortar business, there's nothing more important than your Google business profile. A marketing company should spend just as much time optimizing your Google business profile as they do your website. Number 2, your Yelp. Anything where there's a lot of reviews happening, Yelp, ZocDoc, and then 3 would be Health Grades, ADA, any of these websites where people are leaving reviews about you. You can't buy reviews. You can buy them, but then you will get banned, and then you will be invisible. So you have to get them organically. And so that's why these review engines are so important when it comes to AI visibility. 4th is your Facebook, your social media, because that's self-reported. Instead of someone else reporting about you, you're reporting about something, so that'll be 4th on the pillar. And then 5th will be any kind of medical professional credibility that you have to ensure that. Say it again? TikTok or Instagram. All important. They're all going to be part of that 4th pillar, right? So any social media I would put at like kind of the base of the pillar. Let's talk about how to get your content engineered for AI answers. So 1, there should be a purpose as to why that content is there. I see a lot of really bad blogs written in dental websites that really don't play any role in helping that website increase their web visibility. 2, always including FAQs. How much does it cost? What is the process? The reason we have the FAQs is because the more we can mimic the answer on the web page to be equal to the question that's being searched, the more your website or your presence or your office is going to be mentioned there. 3rd is pricing, because so many people ask about pricing, right? So if you can provide some kind of range, it's always going to push. We're right here in Laguna Hills. So if someone was to search for how much do implants cost in Laguna Hills, your website should be the #1 authority on that, on how much these procedures cost. Aftercare instructions is very important. And then 5th, when to call, when there's a clear call to action. It's a lot of work. Building something like this is going to take probably around 1,000 words. So the reality is that most dental marketing companies, they're probably cutting corners. They're trying to cut costs. They're going to use AI in order to write this content. But I'm telling you, when it comes to being found online, it's still so important to have quality content on your web pages. So here's an example, right? What are dental crowns? We should be having a bunch of examples of what dental crowns are, what the benefits of dental crowns are, and then these FAQs. How long do dental crowns last? Are there alternatives? Does it hurt? What's the chance it's going to fall off? Will my insurance cover this? How do I care for my dental crown? These are answers. You need answers in order to show up in answer engines. So the next part of this is there's a couple different ways you can check to see if your practice is the creme de la creme, the top result when you search for AI. One is you can just prompt it, you can ask, but if you're going to do this, make sure you do it on an incognito form of Grok or Claude or ChatGPT, because what it does is if you've been using it a lot, especially ChatGPT, which is why I think a lot of people are getting off of them, is because they keep on bringing too much of things that they believe are relevant to you instead of just giving you the truth. So if you're going to start prompting, I recommend you either log out of your accounts and then just start prompting it from a free account that's not logged in yet to get an accurate understanding. Or at Dentist Nerds, we can help run you through an AI visibility score where we can tell you, what are the recommended prompts that your practice is showing up or not showing up in. What are the cited answers? Citations, once again, are really important. And then how does your online brand visibility through AI compare to your competitors? So what happens if I don't do this? What happens if I don't get my practice ready for this age of AI? Well, I could tell you 4 things off the bat that are going to happen. 1 is you're going to lose those super high intent patients. Because one thing I can tell you is that patients that come from search, that are searching for something, are the absolute highest intent patients you can find. That's why when we look at website conversion rates versus paid ads conversion rates, those conversion rates on paid ads are always lower, than the ones from the website organically, because those patients are looking for it immediately. Number two is patterns, right? If you don't do it, then the AIs are going to start trusting your competitors because they're taking the time to optimize their web presence for AI. Third is that if we don't invest in it right now to ensure that your website is up to date and optimal for AI search engines, down the line, you're going to have to make that costly investment and decision to rebuild everything from scratch. I can tell you when I look at practices and they show me their website, I think really only about 10 to 15% are even usable. And then after that, because they haven't taken the time to really update this, it ends up costing them a lot of money when they could have just spent the time to maintain it and keep it updated. And then the last thing is what I'm seeing right now, especially when I go to events and you have these dental practices that have been around for a long time, 30, 40 years, is they have absolutely no presence online. And then they're seeing the attrition rates in terms of their patients and their appointments. And then they're asking themselves, I've been in business for so long, I've been a dentist for so long, why is it that my patient growth numbers are not increasing relative to all the other practices around me? And I think it's because they don't adapt. At the end of the day, in any business, you have to adapt or you die. So what I invite you is, if this is interesting to you, you want to take a look at how your practice is looking in comparison to the other practices around you from an AI visibility standpoint, we can help conduct an audit. So we'll do a one-page AI visibility scorecard. We'll take a look at the top 10 patient prompts and then where your status is around them. I have data that shows, in the dental industry, these are the top prompts. Third is that we're going to work together on a 30-day action plan for you. And then fourth, I'll provide a recorded walkthrough, about 5-minute Loom video sent to you, so you know exactly what you need to do in order to improve this. Now, if you'd like to have a conversation, you can scan that QR code or take a picture of it, and then you can book your time with me. And then now I'm going to answer any questions you guys have. I'll open up the floor, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to this. Thank you.